Prolific and influential American playwright Tennessee Williams would be 100 years old in the centenary year, marked with festivals, revivals, and a fresh look into the groundbreaking nature of the man and the work. Joining me in this literary edition of Breaking Through is Dr. Zander Brietzkie, professor of modern and American drama at Columbia University for the past half-decade. He is a former president of the Eugene O'Neill Society and author of the Aesthetics of Failure, Dynamic Structure in the Plays of Eugene O'Neill, published by McFarland in 2001. He was a finalist for the Richard Wall Memorial Award and author of the Instructor's Manual for Teaching with the Norton Anthology of Drama. Professor Brietzkie, welcome to the program. Is Tennessee Williams an appropriate subject for a talk show called Breaking Through?
Absolutely. It's a great title. I mean, that's he would be happy with a title like that, I would think, in the sense of that's what an artist wants to do. He wants to reach an audience and break the plane of everyday existence and grab you and penetrate the surface of things to get at what's most important, the eternal, the existential, the universal.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's certainly what he did at that time. I wonder if that was intended or just kind of one of those karmic things that happen in the theater from time to time.
I think the...
Were we ready for the message of Tennessee Williams at that time? Is that why he actually...
Well, I think I think ready in the sense of the time was right, in the sense of emerging in post-World War II America, and his, what I perceive to be sort of his major thematics work in well at that particular time. And so there is, I don't think it's necessarily a coincidence that he comes to the fore just at that moment when America is victorious and becoming a world power for the first time.
And when you think about it, the juxtaposition of these kind of events, you know, the joyous, or actually the release of the Glass Menagerie in the early 40s, that was wartime. It was during World War II.
The last, yeah,
the messages
45.
of this, obviously the thematic messages. Actually, how would you reduce the thematic messages of Williams at that time?
Well, in Glass Menagerie?
Sure.
There's a question about, are you going to go or are you going to stay? Mm-hmm. I mean, and it's the question that's posed by the narrator, the artist, the autobiographical figure, Tom Wingfield. It's no, I was thinking about that this morning. I never thought, you know, Wingfield as though, you know, taking flight, taking wings. A bird, you know, leaving. He is leaving the nest for the last time, but not in any sort of, you know, Godspeed be with you sort of way, not getting the sort of farewell that maybe we all dream of, but having to make that decision of his own, which is painful, and which is to save himself when he realizes that he can't save his family, or that if he tries to save them all in that horrible little tenement apartment in St. Louis, that he'll never get out and never become, that he has some duty to himself. And if he's going to ever do that, ever back himself, it's going to have to be now. And he does, at a price. Mm-hmm. And the price is guilt, which is, I think, which makes it, I think, a great play, because whether we're young and thinking that we have that choice ahead of us, or we're older and we've made that choice, or we're thinking about our children who may have that choice, we realize, you know, nobody gets out alive on that. We face that.
Mm-hmm. You know, some say he carried on his back the American theater for 20 years or more. Is that a fair assessment?
Well, he wasn't the only one. I mean, he's a contemporary of Arthur Miller. But when you look at the plays that Tennessee Williams puts out over about that 20-year period, from the mid-1940s to 1964, 1965, you get Glass Menagerie, Streetcar Named Desire, The Rose Tattoo, Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, Orpheus Descending, Camino Real.
And you're talking stage and film.
And then film versions of almost all these.
Exactly.
That are also, so he is, every couple of years, there's a new play by Tennessee Williams. And people look forward to it. and they evaluate each one on the basis of what came before, I think, certainly.
Now, one you didn't mention, I actually wasn't scripted, I was thinking about Baby Doll, actually the film, and I saw that recently, and actually it played incredibly well.
And that's a controversial subject film, and one that caused a certain amount of commotion.
Yeah, true. Actually, I understand that some of the work that you've done in terms of your literary analysis has to do with sexuality.
Yeah, well, I think
it was written somewhere. Actually, I read that somewhere. Was that
really? I'm interested. I wish it did. Wow, I didn't think I was that interesting.
Let's talk about William's sexuality then, shall we?
Well,
I mean, certainly Baby Doll being an example of that, which was more heterosexual, well, it's slightly deviant, actually, when you take a look at it. But, when you're looking at William's homosexuality, was certainly a subtext for his work, and much more so in his personal life. Can we ascribe any significance to his daring to reveal his sexual preferences long before it was considered safe to do so? Was it wise?
Well, I think it's the conundrum an artist faces, because just as that statement's true, it's also true that he was criticized within the gay community for not doing more earlier, or kind of coming in later and doing more, and not doing all he could when he had more of a voice and when he was, with the great success of the early plays. So it's, he's going to get criticism, either way. I mean, the plays are suffused with all kinds of what we like to call in literary terms libidinal energy, sort of, between men and men and men and women, and it circulates in all the plays, and usually in those hot, steamy southern environments. Cat on a Tin Roof, Streetcar Named Desire, even Glass Menagerie. Even though there's very little. There's no real sex, obviously, in that play, but it's exuding a certain sort of sexuality. It's kind of with the sort of heat of that small apartment, and the heat of the intimacy of those people, kind of balled up together, and then certainly with Laura and the Gentleman Caller, and Tom and his constant, going to the movies, which is probably more than going to the movies.
Actually, you just hinted actually the nature, the dynamic of the Wingfield family, which was really highly incestuous, and certainly a lot of the dynamics of that family could have been taken right out of an abnormal psychology textbook.
Yeah, and I mean, most families are kind of screwed up that way, I think. I mean, I think it's one of the things that's enjoyable to teach, and students, when you're teaching a class, are obviously they don't know each other, or me particularly, very well from the beginning, and they're not particularly sharing, nor do I wish to conduct a literature class as therapy. But nevertheless,
I mean, you won't take this and do a sensitivity training using Williams as a text for it?
Well, I mean, I think that's what makes drama great, because it's so messy, and it's so sloppy, and it's what it is textbook for the way children rebel against their parents, and parents screw up their kids.
You said it very well, actually, because it really, Williams saw life and literature as a people business, and people businesses are very messy. And I think that's what makes them vital and interesting.
Absolutely.
Hold that thought. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Megan Boyle, and I'm out here in Long Island City to show you about the new E-Garage TV network. As you can see, we are located right here on 23rd Street, right by the Secret Theater. So we're going to show you how to find our space and exactly what you can use our space for. So follow me. All right, now here we are in our lobby, and as you can tell, we have a concession stand here with snacks and beer and wine and soda and water, along with restroom facilities and a great little holding area before any of our shows start. So now we're gonna go check out the theater. All right, so here we are in our sound stage, and as you can see, this space is about 20 by 40 feet, and we have an audience that seats about 50 to 60 people. So you can use this space for really just about anything. If you want to come in and do a concert, we also have a projector screen here that slides down if you want to show your independent films, or if you want to rent out the space to shoot a music video or do any kind of recording. We have a state-of-the-art sound system along with camera equipment, lights, you name it, we have it. So you can book this space for almost anything that you'd want to use it for. So please visit our website and check us out at www.egarage.tv.
You said something there. You really got me back in touch with those feelings I had as a child, as a young teenager reading these plays, because from start to finish there's pain. There's pain. There's pain, difficult decision and pain. We have to make difficult decisions in this life. It may be painful, it may be sad, actually, to make changes in our family configuration and so forth, but we do have the power to make those changes, and that's powerful.
Yeah, it is, and you can see, and I can see in a classroom, you can see because of the writing that students have done, or what they say in class, or the way they interact with others, the way they interact with me, I can tell which ones, where people are along in terms of making that decision. Are they on their own? Are they breaking away, or are they totally enmeshed? Do they know they're enmeshed? Do they know they're not going to get out? And you can see that. And
that's really cool. Actually, that's really cool. Actually, for a professor of literature to be looking at those segue points into real life in the dynamics of the people who are members of the class, and that's what you're doing.
Well, I think I think about what the job of the humanities is, and I think it's not really just to say this is a great piece of literature. It's a great, it does have use value, and part of it is to, I try to talk about, we can learn through the experiences of others and these sort of analog experiences that we then vicariously add to our lives, but from a distance. But we can also internalize it and realize this is our life, and this is our leading us. They're in the same situation, and if I were in this situation, I might do this, or it's causing me to think, oh, I need to I'm in this situation also, and I need to do something about it. And I think that's what. That's what I think, for better or worse. I think that's where the jumping off point with me, and where we spend a lot of time with that.
I'm going to run a quote by you: "The long delayed but always expected something that we live for," which is actually a celebrated line of Tom in the narrator in The Glass Menagerie. I've actually, in my writing classes, I've assigned that as a topic for people to look into their lives, to find those things that kind of get them up in the morning, keep them moving forward, whether they're achievable or not. Just kind of the nature of kind of the carrot and the stick effect in the human condition. Any thoughts on that one? The long delay but always expected something that we live for. Is it hopeful? Is it hopeless?
I think it's hopeful. I think it's hopeful even when it's not attainable. And I think that's something you long for may not be something you actually do.
We may not get there.
We may not get there. I think thinking about getting there. I've discovered that I like writing books, but I don't necessarily like finishing them. I have a goal in mind. I like the idea. I like the project aspect, and striving to do something, but realizing somewhere along the line that the finished product is not going to be everything that I initially strove for, that it's going to fall short of whatever that goal was, and you finish a project, you probably have the same sort of, you finish a project and then you think, oh, I'll never have another idea, what can I do now? And then you go in this sort of, and I used to, when I directed plays in college, I had the same thing. You were on a project, you have an opening night, the show comes off, it's not exactly all you wanted, but it's something you may feel gratified in a lot of different ways, and then I'm in a bad mood. After it opens, wait, and then till a new idea comes along, which is always sort of perfect in your mind. You know, the dream of something, which then kind of gets you up and gets you going, and then you're in the process again, and it's the process and the looking forward, and the daily doing of it that is, I think, fun and gratifying. And then the people you meet along the way as you do it.
Mm-hmm. Actually, another literary moment kind of came to mind as you were describing that. In the Baudelairean model, we have the spleen and the ideal. We have, you know, all the wonderful things that we expect to come to pass. Right. And then once we kind of take a good look, strong look at our work, it's not exactly what we had in mind, perhaps, but maybe it was good enough. You know, maybe it definitely kept us occupied and off the streets, and fairly productive.
Fairly productive, and I'd like to think it was, you know, at a fight, you know, fighting the good fight, and then there's something else that comes along, and I think not doing that. I know causes like, and you probably, as a teacher of writing, I mean, you're probably confronted with the student, the eternal student plea. Oh, it'll be so much better next week. Can I get, you know, can I do it? Can I turn it in next week? And now I said, nah, don't bother. It won't be any better. It'll be what it is. But what I'd be, you know, let's turn this one in, and then let's go on to the next one. And I think that. I think there's a million PhDs unfinished in the world for that same reason. I always wondered why do so many people not finish? Is it because it's that hard? And no, it's not. It's not that it's that hard. It's just that it's a big goal, and it takes a lot of doing every day. And you can fool yourself by thinking, you know, it'll be better tomorrow. And just do it. It's just the first step along the road.
Happy to be a part of this festival. I know it's our first annual festival, so I'm very excited about that.
It's been a wonderful opportunity, so many different films, different topics, and I've enjoyed it.
I personally had harbored a desire or an ambition to do a film festival, but had not gone about doing anything for it because I knew it was a lot of work and I didn't have the time. So luckily for us, Dennis decided to do it.
I'm very happy to be accepted here at Dennis's great festival, and you know, when you put a lot of work into something and you get acknowledged, it makes you feel good.
And we're back with Zander Brietzkie on this, the 100th birthday of Tennessee Williams. I read The Glass Menagerie as a 9th grader. And I was so astonished by the honesty of the treatment of the psychology of creativity and the obstacles to normal communication within families that I went off on my own and I read everything he ever wrote on my own before graduating high school. I can say truthfully that his work changed the way I viewed life. Am I alone in this revelation?
I don't think so, and what you've just said would, I think, thrill any writer. I mean, that's what you're the ideal reader. But no, I think his work has reached a lot of people the same way. I see it in the students I teach, and I see it in myself as well. Although maybe not. I think I'm more of a late bloomer, because I think when I first read Tennessee Williams in high school, I thought of it in terms of, oh, that would be a good part to play. I was more interested in acting at that time. And now, when I find the work layered and rich and disturbing and provoking, and all the things we want a good artistic experience to be.
And so, a good breakthrough to be, I would add.
A good breakthrough.
Let me ask you, Zander, which of the works are the most important and compelling in your view?
Well, Glass Menagerie, we've talked about his first big hit. Still a great play, still a play produced all the time. And a slippery play. It's also, that's one of the plays that, that I often, I think I know it until I look at it again. Streetcar Named Desire is probably, I think, his best play. 1947. Cat on a Hot Tin Roof.
Why do you say that? Why do you say it's the best work written?
I think it's the richest and most disturbing. I think it's his important thematics are the most clear. The characters are vivid. The play, I think, also is not all. I think there's space. I think the play gains in power over time. The play is more disturbing to me now than I can imagine it would have been maybe even when it came out. And I might talk about that a little bit later.
Really? Even in the era of sensationalism, you still find the themes disturbing in that work?
I think it's a very disturbing play, and it's a very disturbing play to teach in class. It's a play in which, in any given, that really breaks down along gender lines. And there is, the play culminates in a very brutal rape. And even at a fine English class of really bright students, it's disturbing the numbers of students often who will talk about Blanche Dubois as, deserving that. And that is
disturbing.
It's disturbing, and the play.
Blame the victim, shall we?
Well, and the play is architected as I can understand to an extent how. Williams is very clever the way he puts that play in, and it's also. The historical aspects of the play I think work really well in terms of it is the old world and certainly the old South, the vestiges of the old South. Peeling away, dying away for good, and the new world to come. And in that way it is that American play of the future, and the future is not all that bright. At the same time, one of the things that makes the play great, and one of the things that makes the play, I think, more disturbing today in some ways is Blanche does. Just on her sort of racial attitudes, it's very difficult for us to look at just contextual, well, she's from this background, of course she felt that way. Our sympathies, I think, tend to lie more with the Stanley Kowalski character. And because most of us are, in that way, it's an immigrant play as well, and a lot of us are immigrants, sons of immigrants, and Stanley is the future in a certain way. And you're embracing the future with bated breath, and I think, it's kind of awful. So I think it's just it's a fantastic, disturbing play. I think my favorite was, I know it was one of Williams' favorite plays, Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. I think that might be my favorite play of his. And Williams didn't like it. I like the film version, and have thought about it with the recent death of Elizabeth Taylor, because she's magnificent in it, although Tennessee Williams didn't particularly like her in it. But that play is filled with everything that's, I think, important about drama.
Speaking of the work, the critics loved the early work, both for the stage and for the film, but they seemed as committed to hating him. In fact, some say that's what killed him. Yeah. When he tried his hand at other subjects and approaches, the legendary flops of the 60s and 70s included The Milk Train Doesn't Stop Here Anymore, The Seven Descents, and Outcry. Some even say he was trying to imitate his contemporaries like Albee. Any truth to that?
Well, maybe. I think it maybe falls into the sort of myth of the artist a little bit too, because I don't think those plays are as good. Although I was at the Rare Manuscript Library at Columbia is doing a Williams exhibition right now.
More about that.
They're doing an exhibition right now, and one of the things in one of the cases was a letter from William Coe, who was then, from 1973, the major critic for the Washington Post, who had given a favorable review of Outcry, which was a terrible failure. But he wrote, and they have the letter. It's a 2-page love letter for this work, and basically sort of, I saw this work, it meant so much to me, I liked it better than a lot of the stuff that came before, and I'm writing you this letter now because I know a lot of people, other people hated it, so it was...
Was he pandering, perhaps?
No, I think it was an honest, I think it was very sincere. Critics don't usually do that. They usually, they usually keep their distance, and,
Well, what about people as powerful as Tennessee Williams? I mean, a certain amount of pandering
there's
does
nothing,
happen.
I mean, there's nothing for him to gain at that point. I mean, Williams is on the, he's 8 or 9 years from dying at that point. There's no more big hits at that point. I think
maybe he was trying to keep him alive.
It pays a tribute to the artist, but I don't think it's fair to say that the critics killed him. I think we like to think that's giving far more power to critics than I think they really have. Williams did a lot, and I think it's more a case of he'd done his major works, but it's laudable and important to note that he was still producing, still writing every day, and ascribing no more importance to A Streetcar Named Desire than Outcry, or The Milk Train Doesn't Stop Here Anymore, or Something Cloudy, Something Clear, or any of the other later plays that perhaps didn't achieve success, but as he's working on them, he's trying to do something. I think it's unfair to say he's imitating Albee. That kind of criticism,
cheap shot.
I think it's just he's an artist who's achieved that much success is a target. So,
so jealousy could be some motivation there.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, even his worst plays are so much better than a lot of other people's best. That's why, I mean, and it's easy to forget that, I mean, those later plays are, everybody wants the next Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, everybody wants the next Streetcar Named Desire. I mean, I don't think a writer can know, or any artist can know, when that best work is going to happen. You'd like to think, that it comes at the end, and you're building towards the end. But most careers aren't like that. Most, and the Shakespeare character in the comedy Touchstone, in As You Like It. As You Like It, it has a great sort of thing. We ripen, we ripen, we ripen, and then rot, rot, rot. And that's more typically the sort of artistic career that it gets better, it gets a point, and then it's all which actually is the natural thing. I mean, to sort of
that is the natural progression.
To sort of decompose.
It certainly is. I want to get more of a sense of what you consider to be some of the new insights we might take from Williams. But first, a few words from our sponsor.
Hi, I'm Ray Wagner, and I'm the host of a brand new show here on eGarage.tv called Still Standing with Ray Wagner. It's a show that features live stand-up comedy, and then we do an interview in front of the people talking about comedy. And it requires an audience. So if you like watching it on the site, imagine how much more you'd love it here, because at the end, we end it with a makeout party. So if you like stand-up comedy or making out, make sure you check out Still Standing with Ray Wagner on eGarage.tv.
And we're back. I'm W J O Reilly. I'm here with Zander Brietzkie, and we are going to look at what new insights can we take from the work. This is your chance to get out there in the skinny branches if you so choose.
Well, every time I encounter one of these plays now, I think I have some of these fresh insights. And one of the things I talk about in class and try to get students to think about is the fact that the play is different each time you encounter it. And what's changed? I mean, the play clearly hasn't. We're reading the same text. But I sort of realize that now with some of these plays, I've had, 30-year history with a play, and and you come back to it and you think you know it, and you realize, wow, I had no idea it was talking about my family, or I had no idea it was talking about this kind of experience, and so that's sort of like my general, approach to literature that I take, and with Williams, I was rereading Tony Kushner's Angels in America again recently with the Signature Theater's production, which is pretty great. That's run this year, and there's a great, in the end of the first half of that, there's a great line. One of the guys, he's kind of lamenting the sort of the Reagan period and children of Reagan, and he says something about questioning our obligations to ourselves and to others and our responsibilities to love. And I think about that in relation to Williams and his plays and all the plays dealing with their characters, their integrity as individuals and their duties. I mean, all the plays are kind of love stories of a kind, and some more twisted than others, but love stories nonetheless. To family, to lovers, parents. Relatives, and how one negotiates that obligation to others as well, balancing with the obligations to the self, and how one negotiates those boundaries.
Mm-hmm. Actually, I'm reminded of Oprah recently, who says that her brand is love. Would you say that actually that Tennessee Williams, that his brand was love?
Well, I don't, maybe that's what I see in all good writers, maybe.
Mm-hmm. So do I.
So, I mean, because really when what else really is important? Mm-hmm. Who's dying and says, although this sort of happens in Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, but who's dying and says, oh, I wish I'd made more money? No one. Even though we see us sometimes get so involved in commerce and getting ahead and professional advancement and making money, whatever, that we maybe lose track of that. But I think somewhere at the end, and that love is not only just to others, but I think there's a relationship then to whatever God one worships as well, and what spiritual connections we make there.
Well said. Is there anyone out there who can take and authentically wear the mantle of Williams?
Probably not. I mean, I like to believe in the uniqueness of writers. I think maybe for historical reasons. I think when Williams was prominent in his big years, again, mid-40s to mid-60s, a new play by Tennessee Williams would go directly to Broadway. That's not true of any writer today. Mm-hmm. I mean, a writer is likely to have his plays workshopped, maybe appear in a regional theater, then occasionally a Broadway play. Now, the good thing, of course, is that the good old days of Tennessee Williams and Arthur Miller, there weren't really that many playwrights other than those two. And we're fortunate now to have many great writers, some of which you can see a new play by someone and say, wow, that was fantastic. And so there's there's more things going on, maybe not a central figure. If I could name one figure, I was trying, because I was in thinking about that. I mean, I might name, this will sound odd, it's not really a Tennessee Williams mantle, but Tom Stoppard might be the playwright who suddenly has been writing over 40 years and keeps writing sort of surprising dramas, and is having, 10 years ago I wouldn't have said he was one of the most important dramatists of the 20th century. Now I might, and now even going to 20th, even 21st, he's still going.
And he has the longevity that Williams had, certainly at least in the
first
there's
the play
20
that's
years.
on Broadway right now, Arcadia, that's a fantastic play. So it's hopeful.
Williams' life spiraled out of control, in the latter years, drugs, drink, bad reviews. Could he have been saved?
Probably not. I don't know how.
Would you have tried to save him if you had the chance?
Well, I think people did to him. He had, it's a miracle that he lived as long as he did. There's so much focus on, the care and love and bond between he and his sister Rose, who was mentally ill and was institutionalized for most of her life, and then Tennessee's estate kept her alive until 1996 in a comfortable state. But the fact is, Tennessee himself was quite ill his entire life. In reading his notebooks and his journals, talking about his extreme sensitivity to the point of not being able to go outside because he was so upset and internally he was so aflutter that the drugs possibly kept him going, and possibly far longer than if he didn't have the work. Those things would have killed him a lot sooner. But his work, I mean, he was, amidst all the sort of self-destructive behavior, I mean, there's a fine line with him, because I think some of that kept him alive. And through all that, he worked constantly, and that's, and impressively. So, he still made it, 70-something years and was still working.
Kind of amazing, wasn't it, really, after all he went through? Yeah. Actually, I just want to mention the name of Dakin, because he's actually notoriously absent from the literature, is the brother of Tom Williams, that he believed, and please correct me if I'm wrong on this point, but he seems he's absent from the literature because he's the one that had the approval of the hated father. And so
well, that's usually the way it works, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, the one who doesn't get the love is the one who's striving and has to break out, and probably realizes later that a great favor was done, even though you probably also don't really get over that.
Of course, Dakin is the one who's survived all of this and is really trying to keep the memory of Tennessee alive, at the very least on the level of who murdered him. And he's actually still looking for proof to that point. To me, Williams' work was about a subtle poignancy, pairs of emotions like love and sadness, or fear and love, or pain and joy. And the term that comes to mind is the saudades, which is a Brazilian term meaning the bitter, it's a samba, the samba musicians call it the bitter sweetness of life. Your thoughts about that in terms of the poignancy of Williams and the message and the power of his message?
Well, I agree with that, and I could even, to get more primitive with that, I mean, the big plays, Glass, Streetcar, Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, just those, I mean, it's life and death. It's more so than any other play. When I make statements like this, I have to check. But death permeates the play. Dying, death, images of death. Even in Streetcar, when the woman toward the end is haunting the play, just the street seller, flowers for the dead in Spanish, and the litany of relatives that have died, the dying plantation, and of course it's the dying of the Old South too, which the plays, and certainly Big Daddy, a play in Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, it was dying. At the same time, Margaret's trying to convince Brick to have his baby, and the other sibling is displaying the progeny of the little monsters to kind of get the estate. So right in that house you have the prospect of new life, new birth, and that's sort of Cat ends on that question, and with the death of the patriarch, and so it's the collision of those two things that I think makes for a wrenching experience. And Williams in Cat certainly is explicit about how people tend to not talk about death, which is very American also, I think. And Williams puts it out there. You can't escape it. And you have to deal, I think, in a great performance, you are aware of your mortality, and in a profound way, and hopefully then exit the theater or shut the book thinking with a little new perspective on things.
I was going to ask you, what of Williams should we take with us into the next 100 years?
Specific plays? I mean, or
just generally.
Or just general.
We've got 100 years, so the centenary, is it the bicentenary of Williams? What do we take with us into those next 100 years?
Well, I think the integrity of the artist is completely admirable. The striving, the never stopping. I mean, we have a sense of, he did those great plays a long time ago and then he stopped, but he didn't. And and he kept, you know, trying to do things that didn't necessarily turn out well, but that didn't stop him. And then, along with that, I alluded to, you know, talking about Streetcar earlier. The message in Streetcar seems to me to be this sort of collision of the old and the new.
And change.
And change. And 50 years later, 60 years later, I mean, the world seems meaner. I mean, the Stanleys have won. We've moved forward, and I guess that's why I think earlier I said the play still, you know, scares me more, because I see the inevitability of that change, which I think Williams is explicit about.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but you said the Stanleys have won. Do you mean the brutes have won?
The brutes have won.
Or the anger, the angry emotions, but
the future.
But not to forget that actually he is an immigrant, or
Absolutely.
represents also immigrants.
Absolutely.
And the immigrants haven't fully won, even though I think that that's also the battle being played out for the vested, the vested minority in power.
But I think it's also in that sort of you know, American way. I mean, I also see Stanley as, you know, that breadwinner who's carving his stake. His grandchildren now are, you know, at Goldman Sachs. And the like. I mean, and the great Williams message in that play, in this sort of mean world, and it's why I think Blanche we have to empathize with her and realize what's been done in that play is that sort of the Williams mantra, you know. The only sin in the world is deliberate cruelty. And that, I think, is something that, you know, I like to think about now in terms of, you know, interactions and what is important.
Of course, I wonder what will it take to create the next Tennessee Williams, or the next generation of Williamses. And I'm going to leave us on that note. I'd like to thank Columbia University Professor Zander Brietzkie for joining me in a discursive celebration of the 100th birthday of Tennessee Williams, the man and artist who moved his art and our humanism forward in ways best expressed by a poem by E. E. Cummings, often featured in editions of The Glass Menagerie. I do not know what it is about you that closes and opens. Only something in me understands the voice of your eyes is deeper than all roses. Nobody, not even the rain, has such small hands. For today's guest, Zander Brietzkie, and for myself, W J O Reilly, be well and see you next time.